We're talking about AI in education, embracing AI in education, because there's a spectrum of emotions, a spectrum of just reactions, we'll say, right? Some people are super excited about it, while other people have a lot of caution, a lot of concerns. Okay. So, what we're thinking about and what we're saying from here is we're going to address, we understand. First, we're going to talk about what some of the concerns are, and we understand them. I mean, it makes sense. They really do. They make sense. But we're going to work through that. We're going to talk about what to do and how to really understand what's happening. Because kind of what's happening is some situations and some issues that people have with AI, some of the concerns, those some of those things were actually happening beforehand. They were happening before AI was introduced. Okay? So we're going to be careful about that. We're going to look at some data. Then we're going to talk about, okay, what is happening with AI, what is happening with AI in business, with AI in the world, in education, and talk about what we need to do. What we need to do to make sure we're really maximizing the potential of AI, okay, as educators. So, good evening. Can you hear me okay? I heard that there was some sound issues before. Can you hear me? Good evening. Good evening. Can y'all hear me okay? Because I don't know what's going on with the sound then. Okay, good, good. Yay. All right. So sorry about that. I'm really not sure what was happening. Look, y'all, we work hard over here at Holistic Fluency. You know, maybe my computer's a little tired. It's like we did not get enough of a break yet. I don't know. But here we go. So again, we are working on, first, we're going to talk about the fears, because there's a spectrum of reactions. When people say AI, yes, everybody has some thoughts and some feelings. So we're going to talk about some of the reactions because they're all understandable. And we're going to talk about the data because people have been doing research. Yeah, do y'all believe people have been doing research on AI in general and some specifically to education for about 8 years already? Although I know a lot of people have become more familiar with the AI, the concept of it, maybe the past 2 or 3 years. We're almost a decade in already on research. Okay. So hold that thought because we're going to talk about it because we understand. And part of people's concerns, part of their reactions, right, is that it's happening so quickly, right? And we know tech moves quickly, but the integration of AI is happening so quickly in various spaces that it sparked excitement and apprehension. So we want to make sure that we talk about these things because, yes, we see the potential for efficiency, innovation, personalization, but then people are concerned about the impact on creativity, on human connection, and just interpersonal skills, period, especially when it comes to our young people. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I am going to share my screen because, well, first of all, a lot of this is just really the conversation behind our most recent edition of our newsletter. We're 5 newsletters in, and this one on LinkedIn has sparked quite a lot of conversation. A lot of, again, because people have strong feelings about this, about if they're for it or against it, or just have some concerns if it gives them pause, right? So I'm going to show some of the research we did behind the scenes and some of the research that is happening that was part of our blog post this last time. So first, let me say before I share my screen that this research came from National University. It was an article that they wrote in the fall from about November 2024. And what I need you all to know is, again, we're about 10 years in almost for AI research, AI connected to education. And so they actually found 131 trends, quite a lot. Quite a lot of trends, right? I'm not going to overwhelm you. We're not going to do information paralysis where you have so much information that you know it's just too much to process. We get stuck. I'm not going to do it to you. We are going to look at about seven quick facts about AI and how it's being used again in business, and also talk about opening in education. Okay, so first of all, the main fact, let me scroll up, you can see this because I started showing y'all on the last one. So y'all, this they found 131 trends. This was at the very end of last year. The main stat that I focus on in our recent edition of our blog post is that 77% of companies are either using AI currently or they're trying to figure out how to use it for their business. So we can say just 80%, right? 80% of businesses are locked in. They see the value. They're trying to figure out how to use it if they're not already using it. A couple more stats. We'll look at the top and I'll zoom in. Some of you all might be on your phone. I'm gonna zoom in some. Okay, so speaking of being on your phone, about 80% of devices already have some form of AI locked in and planted in with them. So whether it's a laptop, whether it's a tablet, a phone, some people have these smart refrigerators, smart TVs, so many smart devices. Y'all, that was the AI that made them smart, right? Okay. The second stat, 9 out of 10 organizations. So this is taking a step back, not just businesses anymore. 9 out of 10 organizations support AI because they see that it could give them a competitive advantage. We're going to talk about how. When we're talking about a competitive advantage, we're going to also translate that to education. What would give us a competitive advantage? When I say us, meaning our youth, our young people, our future, the competitive advantage as they're learning and growing, specifically in math, right? The last one, I'm going to scroll down some more. Some of the concerns. Second to last, 90% of people that do not use AI is because they're unclear about how AI may impact their lives. They're like, it's too many, I have too many questions, so I'm just not going to fool with it. I'm not going to mess with it. Which that is a response, right? That's not surprising. Slash, about a third of people that are consumers, which we're all consumers, we all buy something. A third of consumers think that they're using AI platforms when actually it's more like 80%. Because again, the company is about 80% of the company is already using it in some form or fashion. When you're talking to the chat, right? If you're on a website, when you call customer service and they're deciding where to route your call, all of that, the little chat bot, the lady or sir tries to help you before, all of that, it's all AI, you all. So AI has been going on longer than people actually realized and are coming to grips with. Okay, so I'm sharing there for a minute some of that data again from National University from their article in November 2024. If we just talked about, I have a question for y'all. If we just talked about 80% of businesses being locked in, leaned in, they see the value, the benefit in AI, using it to enhance, right, their work. What percent of educational institutions do you feel are locked in and leaned in? If you had to choose a percentage, what percentage would you say are leaned in and locked in? What's your best guess? 80% of businesses, business world, like, yes, we want that. Educational space, education sector, what percentage do you think? What's your best guess? That they're implementing AI, that they're embracing it and implementing. They're like, okay, we're going to use this. Okay. Someone said 99. Let me go ahead and say this. is less. So if it's 80% of businesses that are locked in, it's a lower number for educational institutions. So I'll give y'all that clue before the big reveal, right? What is your best guess? What percentage do you think? Yeah, honestly, it's staggering, the difference. Honestly, so someone said maybe 65. Hold hold on, okay? Hold on, embrace yourself. It's staggering to the tune of less than 2%. It's 1.7. It's 1 and 7/10%. And again, y'all, and actually, this is from the article that was December 2024. So they got an extra month to do some research. And it's 2% of educational spaces are like, yeah, we're leaned in. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out how to use this to further education, to grow our students. Sit with that for a minute. Somebody said, what? Seriously, sit with that. Businesses. So this is what happens in the background for me. If 80% of businesses are using it, they see the value. In education space, are we actually preparing the students to go work at those places if we're not using it? I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna run back the tape one more time. If 80% of businesses are using it, they see the value, right? They're using it to personalize, they're using it to expand, they're using it to promote critical thinking, to solve more complex issues and problems. But in education space, the young people that we're going to send to work at these places, we're not using it. How is that gap going to get filled in? How is that bridge going to be made? There is no bridge unless we make sure that we embrace this in the education space and use it. All right, you all. So the way that we're going to not just bridge that gap, but make sure we're leveraging it and embracing it in education is because we're making sure that we understand the shift happening in skill requirements. We talked about this a long time ago, but let me talk about it now because we're talking about how it's impacting education specifically. So it's not so much the recall, the rote memorization, these things we talked about. Did you get the right answer? Yes, AI can do all of that. So the part that we still need is, again, that human quotient. It's a heavy emphasis on a skill shift, a skill requirement, the soft skills, right? Some people say the emotional intelligence, the finesse, the critical thinking, the creativity, the analyzing. Not even so much just application anymore. Where it's a lot deeper now. I'm saying a lot deeper, but I'm going the wrong way on Bloom's. It's a lot higher up the Bloom's thinking and demonstration of understanding pyramid. We're at the tip top, right? And so that's what we need to be practicing with the young people if they're going to go to work with and for/create their own business spaces that are going to use AI. We need to be supporting them in their practice and making sure they understand the different ways AI can be used to further their learning, their knowledge, their understanding. All right, all right. Because I can talk about that for a very long time, right? So another article I want to show you, just a little bit of a data table here. So this is from NBER, and let me share my screen again. And what this is showing you is showing you the difference in generations, how all people at least recognize that they're using AI and how often, right? Not just the recognition, but also amongst the ages. For example, 18 to 29 maybe isn't as high. It's tied with 30 to 39. And at first I said, well, that's interesting, but pause. Remember that the lower part of this age bracket includes people that may be in college. And so if they're in college, we know that the education institution that's driving the average way down because it's largely not embraced. It's largely a no, right? AI policy versus understanding how it can be leveraged to advance the thinking, advance the discussions, advance the discoveries. It's like, no, you cannot use it. It's largely shut down by the vast majority of institutions. So when we do the workplace and the workspace, Then 30 to 39, they're using it. Let me back up. I don't know if y'all can see this, so let me say that the blue bars, the blue portion, people recognize that they used it every day the previous week, right? The week before this survey was done. The red burgundy bar is, I used it at least one day. They recognize that. The gray portion, I've used it before, but not last week. I just used it somewhere. So then look at the 40 to 49, depending, right? Because some people talk about depending on the type of job. If it's more senior level, right, versus mid level, then you may not be using it as much to create and to manage projects, solve certain kind of problems. So maybe they aren't using it as much. And then when we get to 50 to 69, that age range, we know that when people have expressed concerns, more than likely, the majority of the concerns have come from people 50 to 64 or up, right? That age range. So it's not as surprising that their stack period, their bar period is lower. Okay. And then, if they answer the survey question at all, basically. So just some things to think about. And again, making sure you all understand that we understand how the concerns and the skepticism comes about. It makes sense. So we talked about some of these concerns. Some people officially say it's the erosion of human connection. So I'm going to call a timeout. In the classroom, there's already been a lot of concern about how well relationship building is going, right? The development of the social emotional learning, the social emotional skills between teachers and their students. So that was a concern even before AI. So I'm like, why would we put all of this as on AI as though AI is just flatlining it? Okay. Another concern, and we're going to talk more specifically, is that AI may be stifling creativity. Now, look, I'm in close connection with some arts educators. And so I often hear and have seen first and hear often about arts programs being defunded and about, sometimes the electives or the specials classes, they're starting to lose some of their flexibility and freedom for how the students can even express themselves, how they can assess. So if some of the adult creativity is waning, then that will have an impact on the young people. And again, that has nothing to do with AI. Again, a third top concern, again, is a diminishing critical thinking. And kind of what we talked about last week, being funny, but kind of not. If someone's whole content, some people, their whole content on social media, they're making fun of, have a bunch of jokes about Gen Z and Alpha generation and their critical thinking skills, or maybe them not being as strong in their problem solving, right? These different levels that there's a lot of room for growth, I'll say, then that's not new, because if AI was really just introduced to the masses 2, 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, then we have adults that didn't benefit from intensive critical thinking development. So that was before AI as well. So again, some of these issues, I understand that people feel as though they may be more exaggerated with AI, but these are not problems that AI is creating. That's what I want to be super clear about. Because some people are like, oh, it's gonna, but that was already happening. All three of those things. So being super clear, super careful about that. What we're going to make sure we do is that we're looking at the different factors that have to be addressed. Y'all, a lot of it is mindset, it's awareness, thinking about the accessibility of the work. So many will need to shift their perception of AI. That is not just, I talk about this a lot. Y'all are going to get tired of hearing about this hammer and the Swiss Army knife. But a lot of people feel like AI is more like a hammer. It just gives the answer to the problem, right? Math class. So it's a hammer, just hitting the nail. Here's your answer. Here's your answer. Here's your answer. However, we need to think about it more like a multifaceted, multi-functioning Swiss Army knife, because it can give us a variety of things. More of it is, again, awareness and knowledge building of what it can do that will actually further the development of AI and further the critical thinking, further the creativity, because really, when we are using AI effectively, just how it can be used to accelerate education, to propel, to just really grow our young people, y'all, AI is actually going to feed creativity. Because if you've worked with AI at all, I just think a basic chat GPT, you have to give it a prompt. A human has to tell it what to do. Now, how creative or boring your prompt is, that's the result you're going to get. That's how specific or generic your generation, right? Your result will be. So it can actually enrich critical thinking as we focus on creating prompts, right? The creativity that has relevance, that has representation. Yeah, there's so much space. Again, it can actually feed the creativity, it can be embedded. It truly can. Just a quick parallel. I've talked about this before, but it's definitely worth repeating until enough people hear it. Y'all, in history, there was a moment in time where Socrates was not feeling writing. He was not feeling books becoming a thing. People writing down what they know and mass producing it. He's like, what? He was not a proponent at all. He felt that it was going to weaken memory and weaken people's internal knowledge. So, what they know, and in turn, what they apply and how they apply it to the world. So, he felt as though people relying on written text would lead to a very basic, insufficient understanding of concepts and of the world. And this, I mean, is this sounding familiar to you? Right? A lot of this, what people are thinking about AI, they're echoing those same ancient worries, I'm going to call them, because it's a blast from the past. Just like writing became a tool to actually preserve and disseminate, to get more knowledge out. Why are we limiting AI to only giving the answer to a math problem? Why could it also not be a tool to preserve information and disseminate knowledge? Why could it not be that? Especially when we're learning how and building our awareness to integrate it mindfully, to really enhance these thinking processes, these cognitive processes and thoughts. Why not? So the traditional math classroom, you all, again, there's a lot of challenges, you all. We know there's a lot of challenges and things going on in education, but we want to speak to a few of them. For math class, we talked about this focus on the correct answers, that's all. Did I get it right? No. And then they erase everything, so there's no context to know if what kind of error it was. We didn't learn from the mistake, we just moved on. Oh, I didn't get it right. So it's deep though, you all, even to the point where even as adults start to shift away from that, if a young person has been used to, okay, it's not right, okay, it's not right, or yes, it is, just a yes or no at the end of the day, they'll carry that part on by themselves. I cannot say how many times I've asked a young person to share their thinking, and they'll ask me, or they'll tell me, well, if that happened, then I get the answer wrong. I'm like, no, but tell me your thoughts. Tell me how you got there, right? What strategy did you use? So it's not right though, right? And that's where that's all they're focused on. So even if the adult isn't focused on that, you can see if this is like a fourth grader, this is all they've known their whole life, right? You can tell where the adults have focused because the children are going to hold up the mirror and let us know. They're gonna give it back to us. The rote memorization, again, especially when we get in higher level maths and there's a lot of formulas. Listen, the young people can get very fragile because they don't remember the formulas, slash, they don't understand what the different variables mean because it was just memorization. Area is base times height. That's for a rectangle or is it for a triangle? Right? These kind of questions, because maybe we aren't taking the time to build out where the formulas are derived from, why the formula looks different from one shape to another. So, all of this context and things, yes, the educators build that, but then also we have AI enhance that. So, we're talking about embracing the AI. Y'all, other challenges in the math classroom, that the questioning, we just did a whole webinar on that. And we're running it back. We're going to do a round two at the end of April. So stay tuned for that information. We just did a whole webinar on questioning because a lot of educators are finding it very difficult to design questions that stimulate, so it means they're engaging, has critical thinking, and is making sure that students are truly engaged and maybe locked in to their personal preferences or interests, right? So we got into the details of where questions fall on Bloom's taxonomy. Y'all, we did a lot of research before going ahead and do this questioning webinar. So again, it was another staggering number in terms of where the questions, those high order thinking questions, right? Those higher level thinking questions, what percentage those were in the classroom compared to where they were on like a formal assessment, like the state assessment. Y'all, it was a 30% difference. It was a 30% difference, literally. So if in class and at home, oh, we're about at 30%, right? We're at about 30% for these higher order questions. The formal assessment, the state assignment, you all, it's at 60% for the higher order thinking. So again, there's that bridge, that gap again. We talked about that when we said if it's 80% of companies and organizations are using AI, they see the benefit, but less than 2% of educational institutions see the value and are using it, then this gap, y'all, the gap is getting bigger and bigger between the questioning and not wanting to apply the technology behind it. So we have to do something differently. And this is our conversation at Holistic Fluency. It's anchored in math and how we make sure we leverage AI and we're on point with our questioning, right? All these things and the social emotional intelligence, because all these things are necessary. All these things are going to be what grows them as mathematicians, but also getting them ready for whatever workplace, workspace, post-secondary, right? That's the goal, for them to be prepared. And we're seeing, and again, like I said, some people's content, some of it's funny. Like, oh my gosh, they thought to do that, the young people. But some of it, I'm like, it's information that we have to fix something. We have to do something differently. That is super clear that we have to do something differently. So we're talking about some of the things, because what's happened is the young people at an earlier age are experiencing math anxiety, right? They said it's about 70% by first grade. First grade, you're 6, right? You've only been writing your name very well for a couple years, but you already have this fear of math that stems from maybe not understanding fully. So improper connections are made, maybe connections are forgotten, and an absolute shutdown. In first grade, though, we have 11 more to go, at least, right? The limited problem solving skills. If we're not fully grasping the concepts, then students will struggle to apply what they do know to new situations. It can be super similar, but if it's new, they are unsure. So that confidence with the limitation of their problem solving skills. Sometimes they may recognize the situation, but they're unsure of what technique, what strategy works and why. Again, a quick example, geometry life, distinguishing between a triangular prism and a rectangular pyramid so I can choose the correct formula. What? Some people are like, Anika, I don't even know but the young people have to know what we're talking about. These are and that's just a small portion, but these are things they have to know, because if I misidentify my shape, I don't classify my shape correctly, I'm choosing the wrong formula, even if the formula is given to me. So again, we have to make sure that we're building them up in multiple ways. So, okay, because I can be there for a long time. Then also this disengagement. There's so much research. The research is growing and compiling for not just math anxiety, but disengagement, especially in math class, especially since COVID, especially post-COVID. So we're using, and some of y'all probably like, I'm tired of hearing that say, we're using boring methods. Math class is boring for a lot of people and from a lot of people. We're jumping right into word problems, and that cuts out so much on engagement. So much context, relevance is cut out. Y'all, it's boring. It's boring. Okay. Um, then we're upset. It's dry. The lesson presentation is dry, but then we're upset when students are demonstrating their math disengagement. They're absolutely checked out. But it's not a surprise though. If every time you came to class, y'all, every time you came to class or every time you came to Alive, I always jumped into a word problem. If Johnny has 5 apples, if Amara has 6 watermelons that she's sharing with 2 friends, what that's not exciting. You're not going to be intrigued to come either. So why are we thinking it's different for younger people? They're still people, right? They still want to be engaged. They still want to have intrigue. So we need to make sure we structure things that way, not presenting dry lessons. We know that we wouldn't be locked in like that. So where's the reflection? Where's the discussion? Y'all, very importantly, donde están? Where are the 3 phases of math? Concrete, right? Did they touch any manipulatives? Where's the representation phase? Then going to abstract, the word problem phase. People are starting students on step 3. We're starting straight at word problems and we're wondering what's wrong when y'all jump 2 steps. What? Okay, I'm gonna move on though, because we can be that's a whole I can stay on that particular aspect of math learning all day. Okay. But again, y'all, the goal is to make sure that we're shifting from this common misconception of viewing AI as a hammer to understanding that it's a tool. It's a tool. It has great potential and great versatility. So think about it more like a Swiss Army knife. One thing I want to be clear about, some of the feedback and reflections from our webinar. Someone was talking about just the personalization of it, right? Where we can use personalization to not only generate questions, but it's generated questions to students' proficiency levels. So it scaffolds up or scaffolds down, and also includes their interest. So we just talked about disengagement. So real quickly, that solved a problem of disengagement because it causes increased engagement and improves performance just because they're locked in. Like, oh, you're talking about someone um, you know, that was making beats. What? You're talking about a field trip. What? They're locked in differently. Y'all, real time feedback was another thing we spent some time on. So someone talked about how the AI driven assessment tools, how they provide instant feedback and it allows students to really identify, this important thing. I'm going to talk about it forever. Identify and address their mistakes, but promptly. Because we get there, right? But they're able to do it immediately, promptly. So some of the different platforms and apps that you may have heard of that do this, and y'all let me know if y'all have heard of these. iExcel, Khan Academy, Photomath. Y'all, recently, I know most people on here are probably in the K-12 space, but recently I learned of an app specifically dedicated to post-secondary math. It's an AI platform called Math GPT. And I spent some time poking around, so it's doing those super high level, those collegiate level math classes, right? It can be embedded in a course with a little plug-in. I said, well, look at this. This is wonderful. Because again, that real-time feedback is going to be essential. And think about, we all different types of time of the day. College students may be working, especially so. Having that AI plug-in, that AI component is going to be powerful for them. Y'all, there's real-time feedback so that we can push past, right? So that teachers can push past those classroom challenges. Students can receive immediate feedback for their questions on their task. One thing that's happening is we want to make sure that you all see that, yes, the task will be challenging, but they'll be engaging and they'll require, again, creativity and critical thinking, because that's the goal. That's definitely the goal. So collaborative learning. Y'all, what if you leverage your AI, right? When you're facilitating group projects or even just grouping the kids for the week, for the couple weeks, however you do your rotations based on their complementary skills, right? There's certain students that are strong in this area, but we're about to move to this task. But some people are going to need to know this base skill really well. And you do your groups based on those skills that complement each other, their learning styles, and just imagine how rich that collaboration in the group could be because AI ran all of the data in the background, right? Y'all, someone during the webinar actually said that this approach just addresses many needs and greatly enhances students' learning outcomes. It does because the students are at the center and the adults are growing their knowledge, building their awareness so that they can best use it to get those great learning outcomes for the students. Okay? Y'all, just we're wrapping up. And I want to say this that just as writing evolved from something that was, kind of a feared innovation, people weren't sure what to do. Now it's evolved, it's an indispensable tool. Can you imagine not writing or not being able to write to communicate? We write, we type, we do this in so many different ways now, right? AI holds the same promise to enrich education profoundly, but we have to make sure we embrace its potential with openness to build our awareness, to develop ourselves. We have to be adaptable and we have to commit that we're going to leverage this technology in such a way to better our teaching and our learning. If you missed the first round of the webinar, do not worry. Again, we're hosting another session very soon at the end of April, the end of next month. So stay tuned for details and join us in exploring this transformative power of AI in education, y'all. Before you go, if you have not, please do be sure to subscribe to the channel. Send the video to someone you're connected to in education. Y'all, they don't have to be directly in the classroom. Making sure that we see and support those in the classroom definitely has a major impact on math learning as well. So anyone you know that's connected to education, thank you so very much for joining the conversation. Let's see. Yes, some more comments in the chat. So a huge gap and widening, right? The gap is widening unless something is done differently. Indeed. So y'all have heard of some of those platforms. And yes, Math GPT, that was basically my reaction to like, what? There's a Math GPT. But again, it's for the post-secondary, so collegiate level math. And I was like, good, because often when it comes to some innovation and things beyond K-12 is left out of the conversation. So I was very pleased to see that. And that's a whole nother conversation. It is. But thank y'all so much for joining the conversation this evening. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. All right. Bye-bye.